Hello, listeners, and welcome to Season 10 of the Meet the Mancunian podcast, Social Impact Stories from Manchester. I'm your host, Deepa Thomas-Sutcliffe, offering you a warm Mancunian welcome. I'm delighted to bring to you Season 10, where I celebrate social impact community heroes across Manchester. I hope, dear listener, you can learn from their life experiences, the challenges they've overcome, and their passion for their cause. My aim for the Meet the Mancunian podcast is to encourage you to live your life with purpose and impact, inspired by the stories my guests share every Tuesday throughout the season. You can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or my website, meetthemancunian.co.uk. Get ready for another season full of thought-provoking conversations and life-changing stories. Welcome to the 11th episode of Season 10 of the Meet the Mancunian podcast, Social Impact Stories from Manchester. Passionate about supporting communities? We hear from Chris Marsh, Ambassador Forever Manchester, in this episode. In Chris's own words,
I always talk openly and enthusiastically about the group. I've made a lot of friends through the group. When my initial conversation was about my children growing up in Manchester, and it's something that I often talk to them about. If you see people that need help, that's your priority. You go and help them.
Thank you so much, Chris, for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Deepa, for having me. I'm looking forward to discussing my life and my contributions with you.
It's great to have you. Tell us about what sparked your interest in supporting the community. Where did you start, and was there a defining moment?
There was a defining moment, actually. It was a sort of a sliding doors moment, if you will. I'll try and cut a long story short for the benefit of the listeners. But it was around about 2012. I got into running. I was always into football. I used to play a lot of football. When my daughter was born in 2010, exercise fell by the wayside a little bit, admittedly. And I got into running. And I had a good group of friends, and we used to go running in Manchester of an evening time. And only about 5 kilometres, which was about my limit at the time. And then one of my fellow runners one evening said, "Oh, I've got a friend. She can't do the Manchester 10K this year. She's got a place. So would you like her spot in the Manchester 10K?" And without hesitation, I said yes. I thought, if I sit and think about it, I'll probably talk myself out of it, may end up regretting it. So immediately I said yes. And so she said, great. She's called Michelle. Michelle will send you the race number. So I was very proud, and I was looking forward to it. I was feeling very positive about it. So I started telling people, oh, I'm just going to running. I'm going to do the Manchester 10K. And the response I always got was, oh, are you doing it for charity? And I said, not really. I'm not really involved in a charity. I don't really do things for charity. I've not really considered it. And the more and more people kept asking me, my response eventually was, perhaps I should do it for charity, really, and perhaps raise some money and raise awareness. But I didn't really know where to start. So again, it was one of the other runners who suggested that I have a conversation with a bloke called Nick Massey, who's the CEO of a community foundation group called Forever Manchester. So I said yes and went to meet Nick. And I explained that I've grown up in Greater Manchester. I was living in Stockport at the time. My children were going to grow up in Manchester. I love Manchester. I work in Manchester. I support Manchester football team. Everything I do is all about Manchester. And I've got this opportunity now with the run. I'd like to give back. I'd like to get involved and see what I can do for Forever. He told me about this ambassadors program, which again I can tell you a bit more about. But it's then from there, 2012, I signed up for the 10K and then decided I should raise some money for charity. And that was the defining moment for me getting involved with Forever Manchester.
I love it that your friends gently nudged you both for the opportunity for the marathon and, of course, for supporting a charity. And
Indeed.
I've done that in Mumbai, not in Manchester,
Yeah.
running for welfare of stray dogs, which is one of my animal charity partners that I'm really passionate about. So that's really interesting. That's how you got connected with Forever Manchester. Tell us more about how you got involved with Forever Manchester and what does it do? So you're an ambassador. What is your role there? What does Forever Manchester do for the Manchester community?
They're a community foundation organisation, and what I mean by that is we raise funds, or we find funds and put them just back into Greater Manchester. Those funds don't leave Greater Manchester, so that's the great thing about it. And that can be anything for disability groups, food banks, the homeless, even things like gardening groups, and there's even a knitting group. I went to visit some elderly women who got together every Tuesday in Stockport to knit clothes for babies, and I think for some other groups, and they needed a place to sit. So they needed a home, a little sort of office underbank in Stockport. Then they needed wool, and they wanted to have a cup of tea while they were there. So they needed mugs and tea bags and milk. And so all these small items soon added up. And again, through hearing about what Forever Manchester could do, I think they approached us and explained what they're all about. So we went in there, put some funds in place to make sure they could budget and spend the money wisely. But also we went in as ambassadors just to learn how the money was being spent. I think some of the ambassadors even learned how to knit at the time. I dodged that one. There's a group of ambassadors, and what we do is we get together every few weeks, really. I'm sure a few of us see each other socially anyway, through the sort of friendships that we've built up over the years, and just try to come up with ideas for raising money. What can we do to get involved? Who can we engage with in order to their involvement as well, and just really sort of drive the fundraising side of it to make sure that people in Greater Manchester benefit from it.
That's really interesting. I have heard of Forever Manchester in a few different contexts, but haven't directly engaged. So it's very great to hear. And I love the Knitting Society story because there's a charity and a community passion for everybody, and it's all ages and all interests. And that is the fascinating part about even Meet the Mancunian, and I'm sure your own personal journey with Forever Manchester.
I think they might struggle if they need to raise funds themselves, asking people for money, or even going to the local council. Those funds might not quite be there, or they might know the process for doing it. Again, it's really just trying to help those people out. But you're absolutely right. It's people from any ages, junior football clubs, all the way up to OAPs and everything in between. So it's, like I say, it's lovely to be involved.
Great. Tell me a little bit about the obstacles you may have had to overcome on this journey working with Forever Manchester as an ambassador, or if you want to just take a broader Forever Manchester lens, that would work as well.
Well, the general one, because I've carried on with the running, and for me, that's my accessible way of being involved with Forever Manchester. We do other things like quiz nights, and which I like getting involved with, and they do the bungee jump, which I will absolutely not get involved with. But there's all sorts of things that they do. I suppose my challenge has always been asking people every time I do a 10K, and I might do 10 or 11 of those throughout the year, asking people to help me with fundraising. I think a few people might get a bit sick of, oh, here's Chris asking for money for Forever Manchester again. I've already given him £10. I gave him £20 last time, and he's going to ask me again. I think they understand that I'm asking the same sorts of people. I'm trying to build my network and ask more people to contribute and donate to the charity. So I do talk openly with the guys there about that. But there's certainly other ways of raising the profile for Forever Manchester through social media, through the network, and talking about it, and even explaining to people that they can actually get involved with Forever Manchester, come along to some of the events. It's not just about asking you for money. There are different ways where you can get involved. And again, it is about helping people on your doorstep. I'm sure Manchester has been through its own challenges throughout the years. Obviously, the bomb that went off and the tragedy and the horrendous circumstances around it. Only a few years before that, we had a famous poet, he's famous now, Tony Walsh, wrote a poem called This Is the Place. And that was actually commissioned for Forever Manchester quite a long time ago. And I remember just after the bomb, a couple of days after the bomb went off, we all congregated at Albert Square, and the mayor was there, and we saw people on stage talking about it. And then Tony appeared, and he gave his This Is the Place speech.
You must read it at the end, because that would be quite nice. Sometimes I ask guests to read a poem that's meaningful for them, and this is quite an evocative one. I thought it was amazing, and I haven't heard it, but I've read it. And I think it would be quite nice to, because it's got a great connection to Forever Manchester.
But in terms of challenges, I'm sure there's plenty. But on reflection, there's people worse off than you or I. I'm grateful there's plenty of abundance in Manchester. However, there's a lot of poverty, generations of unemployment. I worked in Moss Side for 10 years, and I was doing little bits of work within primary school. So I've seen the levels of generational unemployment. And like I say, the poverty that's right there on your doorstep. So there's that sort of constant reminder that there's a lot of good things going on in Manchester, but there's still a lot of people that need help. So if there's ways that you can get involved or do something, whether it is just a run or a small donation or getting involved, then it's there. And I think there's a lot of people that are able to do it.
We'll definitely talk about some opportunities they can get involved towards the end of the podcast as
Sure.
well. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I do understand if you're going back to the same people, then finding that a bit challenging. But like you
Yeah.
said, you're trying to expand the network and show people other ways to get involved, which
Yeah.
may not be financial and how they could contribute still. So, when you think about that Forever Manchester's made so far, what are the things that you'd like to call out? Maybe looking back a couple of years, because I know it's been there for some time.
They've been going since 1989. We celebrate a birthday with a big birthday party every year, big birthday bash. And I'm only mentioning this because as part of the birthday bash, they have an awards ceremony. And at the recent one, I was awarded the Great Mancunian of the year. So I was very proud. So it was Tony Walsh, who I just referenced, who handed the award with one of the BBC radio presenters on stage as well. Events like that, we can raise a lot of money through donations and all sorts of activities that go on through the night. A lot of funds are raised on the night, is what I'm trying to say. That's always something to look forward to. But because of the constant events that go on through the year, I mentioned rowing the 10K and bungee jump and the quiz night. There's a comedy evening as well. It was just hardcore forever funny. There's so many events that go on throughout the year to engage with people of Manchester, raise a profile and help them discover ways that they can help people, as I say, on the doorstep, help local people. That's what it's all about.
Congratulations on the award for the Great Mancunian. That
One of
does
the reason I
sound
brought
very
it.
nice.
The knitting one is the obvious. Honestly, there's so many. There's so many. I remember we did a backwards one once through Heaton Park. They don't do it anymore. You have to run backwards for 5 kilometers. When you're doing fun things, it's all well and good to get involved and get caught up in the enjoyment and the excitement and everything. But when you realise it is that whatever's being raised or what the awareness is all about, helping those less fortunate, there's plenty of things that go on at Christmas time. And again, with no disrespect to any other charity, some of the larger ones wouldn't see the benefit of smaller donations. However, Forever Manchester will still use those small donations, and those small donations can still make a difference. They also have a grant program, so some of the funds that are raised can go towards people that are perhaps starting a small business or they need to do something with a local football team, whatever that looks. And again, Forever Manchester can make decisions and help put funds in place. So that's, again, another sort of worthwhile element of engagement with Forever Manchester. It's just a very proud ambassador for Forever Manchester. I always talk openly and enthusiastically about the group. I've made a lot of friends through the group. And like I say, when my initial conversation was about my children growing up in Manchester, and it's something that I often talk to them about. If you see people that need help, that's your priority. You go and help them. And hopefully when they grow up, they'll be involved in Forever Manchester or something similar. It's hopefully something that will be passed on if they decide to stay in Manchester, which I hope they do.
I think so. I think there's a real culture of pay it forward, and I've definitely experienced that as a very new Mancunian, where there's a lot of support and collaboration. You're right, there is a lot of hardship as well, but that hardship has perhaps led to that community rising up to support itself.
Mm-hmm.
What is something some people often misunderstand about the field you're in? So maybe it's the role of the ambassador that you want to demystify, or anything else that you want to pick up and say that, oh, you know what, people don't quite get this, and I can myth bust in a few minutes.
I suppose they do ask me, what do you mean by an ambassador? It's not my full-time role. It's very much a volunteer role. I don't receive any payments or anything like that. I have to obviously make that clear. It's not a paid role or anything like that. I do still have a full-time role. I work for myself in freelance business development. And again, that's all about helping people. But no, as an ambassador, I suppose I do have to clarify with people. It is about representing the brand, talking to the right people, talking to decision makers, talking to people who can influence and just raise the profile of the charity. That's all it is in its simplistic form. In its purest form, it's very much just raising the profile, I think. Banging the drum for a worthy cause. That's what it's all about. But I don't mind. I kind of like it if people ask me about it. It's not a negative thing. I see it as a positive opportunity to talk about Forever Manchester.
I think so. And I guess it's an opportunity to engage, isn't it? Absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And it's always nice to have something that it may not be big, but something small that you'd like people to just understand a bit better.
Yeah, why not?
So, what's your top tip for somebody looking to make an impact in their community? Maybe they're not in Greater Manchester, they're in one of the 70 countries, or maybe they are in Greater Manchester or another part of the UK.
Oh, that's a good question. I guess discovering an organisation like Forever Manchester that has a focus on helping people locally Again, meaning no disrespect to the larger charities that spend millions and perhaps billions across the world. But when it's on your doorstep, for me, I feel like I'm making a difference then. So my advice would be just see what's going on in your local area, whether it is just within a small distance, whether it's through local council, perhaps visit your local library, or just something simple like Googling what's going on in your current area. There's a park that we walk the dog just round the corner, and I often see the sign of, we're looking for volunteers to help clean up every Saturday morning. And I think, oh, perhaps I should do that. Perhaps it's a matter of time, and I will do it at some point. But I think the point is, there's always people in your local area. There's always a need around you, so you don't have to look too far in order to help. And there's plenty of people that need help.
I like that very much about that local focus. And actually, my second guest was when I was walking my dog in Wythenshawe Park, seeing Wythenshawe Waste Warriors. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me talk to them. So,
Yeah.
absolutely, there is people making a difference everywhere and just trying to find a connection to them.
Yeah.
An opportunity for you to talk about anything coming up?
There's the Manchester 10K is coming up. That'll be in May. I'll be participating, wearing a T-shirt for a Manchester logo. In previous years, I've run as with a caricature Captain Manchester. And previous year, they asked me to wear the costume for the 10K, which I agreed. Not sure I'd do it again because it's very hot. It's generally a hot day in May when they do the 10K. And the character has a huge helmet on and a cape and long sleeves and knee pads. And so I was running. Definitely looking forward to the Manchester 10K in May. I do know there's another Forever Funny, the comedy night at the Frog and Bucket. That'll be in October. But honestly, there's so many events that go on throughout the year. So I would certainly recommend, if anyone is interested, to take a look at the website, forevermanchester.com, and the list of the events will be there.
Thank you, Chris. And I can imagine that in the heat, it wouldn't be fun, but I've done, they used to have, I think they used to call it the fun part of the Mumbai run. It was a 10,000 step option rather than the full Mumbai Marathon, but it was very much people in costumes and bands and dogs walking and all kinds of fun things.
It should be about fun. It should be an enjoyable event. Yeah. I only do it for the enjoyment and obviously to raise the profile for Forever Manchester as well.
Absolutely. So I'll now move us to the signature questions I ask all my guests. And the first one is, what makes Manchester a unique place for social impact work?
It would be difficult to say unique because I'm sure every city, every town across the country has experience of abundance, but also of poverty. And I use that word poverty because I think it is poverty. But for me, Manchester is it's where I grew up, it's where I live now, and it's where I'll always live. I can't imagine living anywhere else, to be honest. Is it unique? We often talk about the culture of the people, the dive. Again, you'll find that in a lot of cities across the country. But for me, it's so apparent, and everything that Manchester has, including its rich history and all the cultures that you see every day. It's, for me, I suppose it feels unique. It's something that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to walk the streets of Manchester and feel like I'm part of a Mancunian. So it's a difficult one to answer, but it feels like it's on its own for me.
I love it because it feels like a very special place. I've lived in different parts of the world, and Manchester's not the first place I've lived in the UK, but it does feel, as a Mancunian, you have this different experience and connection, and I'm sure other places do too. This is about Meet the Mancunian, so we talk about Manchester.
Absolutely.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure in Manchester, who would it be with and why?
I always say George Best. He's an adopted Mancunian. Obviously came over from Belfast when he was very young, so Matt Busby brought him over. But I think how he affected Manchester United, the part of the history of the success in the 50s and 60s, and then living his life and everything that went through it. And I think I've enjoyed his autobiography, reading stories about him and watching all the programs about him. If I was to choose one, I'd say George Best.
Very interesting. I have been to the Football Museum, but I'm not very much into football, so I don't know much about him, but I will look him up.
Please do.
It sounds like he's made a big influence on the football scene, so that's really interesting.
Yes.
If you were to create a social impact superhero, what powers would they have and what cause would they fight for?
I mentioned Forever Manchester has our own superhero called Captain Manchester. I think if we were to ask Captain Manchester what a superhero would be, just the ability to make people smile and to make them feel good about themselves and to feel like they're part of a community. and part of a wider audience, a wider group of people that it can rely on and feel part of. I'd say that. I'd say Captain Manchester making people smile.
And what's his cause? Captain Manchester's cause?
Just to make Manchester a better place.
Like that very much. It's great that there's an actual superhero and not a fictional example. What's the most important life lesson you've learned so far?
Happiness is the most important thing, and striving for happiness, and a sort of an eternal search for what happiness means. And that's not a sort of wishy-washy comment. It's understanding that you will have bad days, and everybody does have a bad day, but the confidence and knowing that you'll have more good days than bad days, and then understanding what that good day looks like when you're driving home from work, or you go and speak to your partner when you get in, or speaking to your family. I've had a good day. What does that good day look like? Why does it make you feel happy? What does that happen? What's the definition of that element of happiness? And trying to do that more consistently, just understanding what it is and replicating that pattern and doing things that make you happy as often as possible.
Like that very much. So being very conscious to choose what makes you happy, and like you said, finding your own secret sauce that you're going to try to have more good days than challenging days, because obviously we all have both.
Yes.
Great life lesson, important, and I think one that could help many people at this point in time. How can interested people reach out to you and learn more? Where can they find you, and where can they find Forever Manchester?
More importantly, Forever Manchester, the website is forevermanchester.com. They're available on all the social channels, Instagram, and the best place for me, I suppose, would be LinkedIn. I'm an avid user of LinkedIn, and I'm always monitoring LinkedIn. So if you want to send me a message through LinkedIn, I'm always generally available there.
Earlier, we spoke about the Tony Walsh poem, which was actually commissioned by Forever Manchester. So tell us about that, and maybe just read the poem for listeners. That would be quite powerful.
Right, yeah. It was a famous poet called Tony, has been a long-time friend of Nick at Forever Manchester and the rest of the team there. And they actually got together with the creative agency who commissioned the video for it as well. And it was just making reference to everything in Manchester. Now, this isn't the only poem that Tony's written. Tony's written quite a few, some absolutely incredible poems, but this is the place I think is his flagship poem. I think it's become famous for it. That's the most appropriate term. Under the tragedy, following the tragedy of the bomb going off. I could read a short element of it if you'll indulge. Oh, I couldn't do it justice. Tony's voice makes this.
I wouldn't insist, but it's just quite impactful from a listener perspective. And it ends with saying, always remember, never forget, Forever Manchester.
I'll read a little bit of it. Perhaps the first 2 or 3 verses, if that's all right, Deepa.
Of course.
This is the place. In the northwest of England, it's ace, it's the best. And the songs that we sing from the stands from our bands set the whole planet shaking. Our inventions are legends, there's nought we can't make. And so we make brilliant music, we make brilliant bands, we make goals that make souls leap from seats in the stands. And we make things from steel, and we make things from cotton, and we make people laugh, we take the mick somewhat rotten, and we make you at home, and we make you feel welcome. And we make something happen, and we can't seem to help it. And if you're looking for history, then yeah, we've a wealth. But Manchester way is to make it yourself, and make us a record, a new number 1, and make us a brew while you're up, love, go on, and make us feel proud when you're winning the league, and make us sing louder, and make us believe. Listen, it's the way that Tony expresses himself through his poems is wonderful. Proud to at least reference some of his work in the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Chris. I do appreciate it. It's hard to live up to somebody like that, but it is really, even from just hearing you say it, I wasn't reading it, I was listening to you, I was getting a bit of goosebumps. As I said, as a new Mancunian coming across that, as okay, now I feel like I understand Manchester. Yeah, obviously, my guests, especially the early guests in the seasons, were like just trying to introduce me to the music scene and the football scene, and just helping me learn so much about this city's culture. Over these last 3 years, I feel like I've learned a little bit more.
Good.
But there's so much more to experience and learn.
There really is. And Tony makes great references in his poem. If you or your listeners want to have a look, there's a brilliant video on YouTube that accompanies the poem. So definitely worth looking up.
I just wanted to say a big thank you, Chris. It's been great to hear so much about Forever Manchester, your role there as ambassador, your passion for running, and how that brought you into this interesting journey. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
Chris, I really enjoyed learning about supporting communities today. Dear listener, thank you so much for listening to the 11th episode of the Meet the Mancunian podcast, Season 10. I hope today's episode has inspired you to make positive change wherever you live. Tune in every Tuesday for a new episode or log on to meetthemancunian.co.uk to listen to all the episodes and learn more about my podcasting story. Next week on Tuesday, 6th May 2025, I speak to Sophie Jones about tackling climate change. It's wonderful to hear from you, dear listener. You can share your story or send me a message on my website, meetthemancunian.co.uk, or on social media at the rate Meet the Mancunian on Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky, and at the rate Meet the Mancunian podcast on YouTube. Thank you to my wonderful community of listeners. Remember, your voice, your story, and your actions matter. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and let's inspire even more positive change to a better, kinder world. And until next time, let's continue making Manchester and beyond a place of greater impact, compassion, and action.